if you'll join me in the oath of office.
It has been nearly a year since Sergio Diaz became chief of the Riverside Police Department. Over these last few months, the former veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department has faced challenges both professionally and personally. He took over a department that was reeling in the wake of the scandal of former Chief Russ Leach. Then, in November, Diaz faced the crisis of the murder of police officer Ryan Bonaminio. Later that month, Diaz's own son died. They were moments that could have defeated anyone, but Diaz says things happen for a reason. In a candid interview with Press Enterprise reporter Alicia Robinson, Diaz discusses his short time on the job and the future of the Riverside Police Department.
There were the very first thing, and the most salient thing, was that there was literally a lack of leadership. I mean, the senior, in the wake of the events of a year ago, most of the senior leadership of the department had either retired or had announced that they were leaving. So, you know, that's both a problem and an opportunity, in the sense that I realized early on that I'd have the backing of the city council and the city manager to fill that leadership void. But that was the primary salient thing about the department. The other thing was, of course, there had been a lot of controversy. It had been covered extensively in the newspaper. It was kind of the talk of the town. So that was, I was concerned about the department standing with the community, whether there were issues of trust and such. But happily, what I found was that the day-to-day work, you know, the regular work of the police department was getting done and getting done well, which I think speaks to the quality of the people providing the day-to-day service. I think you've heard me talk about this before. I think we in Riverside are very lucky to have well-trained people delivering service at the front level, answering the phone, investigating crimes, answering radio calls. I don't know that the department was ever adrift. I think people knew their jobs and were doing them well. But the situation we found ourselves in was one that had to be addressed, because that leadership vacuum, and by the way, leadership was occurring at the supervisory rank and at the middle management ranks, but sooner or later, the workforce is going to demand to know who's the chief, what does he or she want, where are we going in the long term. So those are the most important aspects of what we stepped into.
Now, a lot of things have happened just since you've been here. What were some of the bigger challenges that you've faced in your tenure so far?
Well, obviously the biggest challenge of all was dealing with the murder of Ryan Bonaminio. That is the thing that no chief wants to have that happen, obviously. But we take the job knowing that it's a very, very real possibility just by the nature of the work. It's the most tragic thing that any of us can face. On the other hand, out of any tragedy, some good things come. And one of the things that I think came out of that is within the police department and within the community, we got to see what we talked about earlier, that in fact this is a very good department. The department came together immediately. A lot of people worked real hard for a long time. That murder was solved within 48 hours. The community came together with us in so many ways. You know, the offers of rewards for information leading to the capture of the suspect responsible, the outpouring of grief and of support for Ryan and for his family and for all of us in the department. Those are very good things to happen. And it also, frankly, focuses the mind on what's important. There's a lot of things. This is not only a police department, this is a workplace. And it's important for people to remember that. Just like in your workplace, not everybody gets along. There are a diversity of opinions about how things should be done, and people sometimes remember slights of the past and all that. And that's a challenge. That consumes more of your time and attention than probably it should. But I think Ryan's death helped us focus on what's important. Since then, there have been some other things. Again, there's a public perception that was created by the events of last year and probably events of long ago. You know, the Taisha Miller incident, for example, is something that still informs the way the police department does its job and the way people feel about their police department. The assault almost 10 years ago on the city council, that is still a significant event, and there have been several significant personnel actions over the last year or so that that are important in people's minds. So all of that has to be factored into consideration. I think the most important thing I do here, and it's a work in progress, but it's to gain the trust of the community and, frankly, the trust of the department. I brought in a team, a management team. I brought in an assistant chief from another city, Chris Facino from Pasadena, Jeff Creer from LAPD. I elevated Mike Blakely from position of captain to a senior position as a deputy chief. And I don't blame anybody for looking at that and trying to figure out, okay, what does all this mean? Where are they going? What's the angle? And the first 6 months we were here especially, a lot of attention and a lot of time was spent on trying to convince people there's no angle. All we want is to have our entire workforce work hard, work consistently with what we understand are some of the basic tenets of good police work. One of the things that we've embarked upon is through the Community Services Bureau, we're going to create the Riverside Police Foundation. And that's going to be primarily a mechanism to get some resources so we can be more involved in community programs, but specifically, even more specifically than community programs, I'm interested in doing more with youth. You know, we already have some pretty good youth programs and that were here in place. You know, none of us are taking credit for it. There's good work by other people, other community people, in fact, not just police department people. But for example, youth court, crime-free multi-housing. Those are great, but I think we can do more. I think we can partner with other institutions in the city, yeah, the colleges, the school districts, the YMCA, the parks. My goal in this regard is that a few years from now, we will have made, we the police department, individual police officers and other employees, will have made a positive influence on young people. Maybe have steered some kids in the right direction who didn't have necessarily role models or those influences. And by the way, this isn't all altruistic. This is what's in it for me is the police department will work less on this. You know, there's no calculating how much good you do by the problems that aren't caused by people that are steered in the right direction and become productive, tax-paying members of our society rather than deficits to us. And I've never seen my job as being a necessary evil. And I want to convince, I think it's possible to convince people of goodwill that their police department is not a necessary evil, that we're a force for good, that we can make things better for our existence, not just that we can deal with all of the negative things that exist in society. I believe, and I hope to convince others, that we're more than worth the taxes that the public pays for our existence. I truly believe that. I've seen where what happens when a police department is not effective, when we're not doing our jobs, or when the signal goes out there to evildoers that if we all go out into the streets all at once and rape and pillage and riot, there's more of us than there are of the good guys, and we can get away with what we want. I plan not to let that happen as long as I'm in charge, and I plan to set the stage so that never happens in this city. By the way, the other thing we haven't talked about is, and I want to make a point of it, is I have been welcomed in this city so warmly, me and my family both. this is a great town, and I'll admit to anybody who asks, I didn't really know anything about Riverside before I came out here, and this is a great town with excellent people. There's so many things about the town that I really enjoy.